Okay, so on page Samach Tes at the bottom there, V'hinei, we're continuing our understanding of Atik and Arich, the two levels of Keser. And what we said was that the difference between Atik and Arich is the difference between Ratzon and Tainug, will and pleasure. That when you do something because of will, you have a will to do something, so your will can override your other faculties and force you to do it, even though you're lazy and lethargic and whatever else. If you have a will determination, so then you overcome that lethargy and you do it. You force yourself to do it. That's will. But pleasure, when you have a pleasure in something, you don't need to overcome your lethargy. Pleasure is the driving force behind all of your faculties. If you feel pleasure in something, that pleasure will inspire your faculties to do it. Not inspire them, because they'll be into it. They'll be with you. So in a similar way, when you can draw down from the light above, the light that transcends Hishtalshlus, if you draw down from the world of Arich, which represents Ratzon, so what that means is that you can override this world. If you draw down from Atik, this world comes along on the ride, because Atik is Tainug. So we said that there's two types of tzaddikim. There's one called a tzaddik and one called a yasha. A tzaddik.
Do you want this world to come along on the ride?
Yeah, the idea is to bring that which is higher than Ishtalshlus into Ishtalshlus. That they should come together. So the example is a tzaddik who's trying to achieve a miracle. So there's two ways that this can happen. It can happen in a way that's in spite of the world, or it can happen in a way that fits into the world. So what is that? That a tzaddik, someone who's on the level of a tzaddik, can draw down a light that's higher than Ishtalshlus, that will override this world. So Hashem, meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as Hashem works within Ishtalshlus, has decided that things should happen in a certain way. The tzaddik can be mevatel that, can cancel, nullify Hashem's decree. What does that mean? Does it mean that the tzaddik is working against Hashem? No. It means that there's Hashem's decree, which is Hishtalshlus, the rules, the way things should be according to Hishtalshlus, the rules of creation. The tzaddik can appeal to a level of Hashem that is above the rules and override those rules, and therefore the decree will be nullified. So while the decree was a person should be sick, God forbid, or somebody should be suffering, the tzaddik nullifies that decree by appealing to Arich, the level of Hashem that is above Ishtalshlus, that can override the decree. But then there's a yasha, somebody who's on a higher level than a tzaddik, and that is a person who can reach Atik. Atik is where you can remind Hashem of the pleasure He has in giving to the world. And when He has pleasure in giving the world, it's not just Hashem's higher than Ishtalshlus that overrides Ishtalshlus, but Ishtalshlus itself fits into that, because the underlying common thread of all of creation is Hashem's pleasure in creation, the reason He created it. Just wait there. Just you wait there. So, what does that mean? So we said that the Gemara says that somebody who teaches an Am Haaretz Torah, for him Hashem says, even if I've decreed something, I will nullify my decree for him. What does that mean? That somebody who teaches Am Haaretz Torah means somebody who transforms the ignorant to become learned. Somebody who takes somebody who's disconnected and connects them. What that does is that reminds Hashem of the great pleasure He has in this world. What's Hashem's greatest pleasure? To see the transformation of a human being. That's what gives Hashem pleasure in the world in the first place. And so, when somebody who's involved in that, somebody who's involved in transforming the world, taking the world of ignorance and bringing it into the world of Torah, so such a tzaddik has the power of appealing to Hashem's tainug, pleasure in this world. And when Hashem has pleasure in this world, so then it's not that the tzaddik nullifies his decree, it's that Hashem Himself nullifies the decree. That Hishtalshlus itself changes for that tzaddik. That's what we saw last time. Let's continue. V'hina yedua. V'hina yedua, dehagam she'atik hu meloshen netuk v'nivdol mikol makom mezeh shenikra b'shem atik yomin shenetuk miyomin muven shegam legabi hadargu da'atik yeshnom yomin el shu netuk mehem. Now the level of atik, which we've described until now, what does atik actually mean? Atik comes from the word netak v'nivdal, which means separate and beyond. Unlike arich, arich is the part of Kesser that somewhat relates to Hishtalshalus. It's higher than Hishtalshalus but relates to Hishtalshalus. Atik is the higher level that is completely beyond Hishtalshalus. Yeah? That's what atik is. And that's what atik, by the very definition of the word atik, is that which is beyond. But nevertheless, by the fact that it's called atik yomin, that which is beyond the days, that it's separate and beyond the days, from that itself you can understand that atik does relate somewhat to that which comes after it. Because you can't call something beyond unless there's somewhat of a relationship. This we saw also in the previous mimer. Even when you say something's beyond something, that's already a relationship to it. To be beyond something means to have somewhat of a relationship, a negative one, but somewhat of a relationship is there. So atik is described as atik yomin. Yomin are the days. What are the days? The days refer to the days of creation, which are the 6 or the 7 spheres, emotional faculties. Atik yomin means the level that is completely beyond creation. Atik yomin, separate from the days of creation, separate from Hishtalshalus. But calling it separate and beyond is already a relationship. Right? Remember we said in the previous mimer that to say that an idea is so deep you can't touch it is an absurdity. It means nothing. You can't say an idea is so deep you can't touch it, because ideas are not touchable in the first place. To say an idea is so deep you can't understand it, because understanding and ideas come in the same realm. So to say you can't understand it, it's beyond your understanding. There's a relationship between understanding and an idea. There's no relationship between understanding an idea and touching. So you can't say beyond. So to use the word beyond, there must be some relationship between the two things. To say that atik is beyond Hishtalshalus. Okay, but as soon as you've said that, as soon as you've said beyond Hishtalshalus, it means there's somewhat of a relationship, just a negative one. So even atik can't be the highest level, because even atik has somewhat of a relationship with Hishtalshalus. What's its relationship? It's beyond. A negative relationship, but a relationship nonetheless. There's somewhat of a relationship there.
It's like a house and an attic. It's beyond the house, but it's connected to it.
Yeah, but that's an attic is really connected. Right. Is a part of the house. Right. You were talking about there's the house and then there's the sky. But even that means really beyond. So the word beyond itself implies a certain connection. So that means that atik must not be the ultimate level. There must be something more than atik, even higher than atik. Brackets v'serim, even more so. Shegam darga shenikra atik stam. Shalamaylam atik yomin. Even if we describe atik as just being atik, not atik yomin, the level that is beyond Hishtalshalus, but just atik, beyondness. Even that level, but nevertheless, if you're calling it beyondness, the pirush atik hud shenetak, that means that it is beyond something. Therefore, it does have somewhat relationship with whatever it's beyond. Meaning, what the Rabbi is saying is that sometimes atik is called atik yomin, that which is beyond the days, meaning Hishtalshalus. Sometimes it's just called atik, beyondness. So at first glance it would seem that it's something that's just called beyondness. It was just, that's its name, beyond. That sounds like it's really beyond. Says the Rabbi, no, not quite. Because calling something beyond already means that there's something it is beyond. So it somewhat relates to that which is lower than it.
So atik by itself is higher than atik yomin.
Yeah.
But
it's still, but it's still connected. because it's beyond. Calling something beyond means there's some relationship.
What's the connection with Neros Chanukah?
It's a long connection. ולכן ביטל הגזרה שמצד הדרגה דשתלשלוס על ידי המשכת עתיק היא בדרך פעולה. So therefore, if you are on a level of a tzaddik, even higher than a tzaddik called a yashar, where you can draw down a bitul agzera, you can nullify a decree through connecting to the level of atik, it still takes somewhat of a work, somewhat of an effort for the decree to be cancelled when you're drawing down from atik. Because atik does recognize hishtalshlus as existing. We'll explain. Because Hishtalshlus has said that there should not be a blessing. There should not be, the Hishtalshlus, the rules of the game say that there should not be a hashpah. By Adam Shachas Atik, he misbatelis. And then when you draw down Atik, you can nullify that decree. We'll keep going and then we'll explain. Just when you nullify the gzeira, the decree that is in Hishtalshlus through drawing down Atik, Hishtalshlus itself agrees with that. It comes in line with that. But if you can change Hishtalshlus, change the gzeira through drawing down Pnimius Atik, the inner level, the higher level of Atik, then it's not through an action or an effort that it's nullified. It's an automatic, natural thing. Again, we were differentiating earlier two ways that a tzaddik can nullify a decree. What is a decree? What is a gzeira? A gzeira means that according to the laws of Hishtalshlus, the system that Hashem has put into place in creation, certain things happen, certain things don't happen. Sometimes things are good, sometimes things are not good. But there's a decree that according to Hishtalshlus, according to the rules of creation, a certain blessing is not going to come. That's the decree. A tzaddik comes along and cancels that decree and says that even though the decree was it shouldn't happen, I'm saying it should happen. The decree was this person should not have health. The tzaddik comes along and says no, he will have health. Now we describe two ways that the tzaddik can do that, depending on what level that tzaddik is on. All tzaddikim have access to l'mayla mishtalshlus, the divine light that is higher than the system, higher than this world. That's why they can cancel decrees. So even though Hishtalshlus, the rules say this, the tzaddik can appeal to a level within Hashem that is higher than the rules, and therefore change reality. So the rules say the person should not be well, the tzaddik comes and says, no, they should be well. That's what a tzaddik is. A tzaddik is a person who's connecting to higher than Hishtalshlus, and can draw down that level that's higher than Hishtalshlus into Hishtalshlus. The question is, how high is the tzaddik as to how high his miracle is going to be? Some tzaddikim reach the level of arich. Arich is the outer level of keser, which is higher than Hishtalshlus, but somewhat connected to Hishtalshlus. On that level, it will not change Hishtalshlus, it will override Hishtalshlus. Meaning the rules of the game are, it should be this way. The tzaddik says, no, I'm cancelling that decree. I'm overriding that decree. Just like we said, within the person, your power of ratzon, of will, can override your other faculties. And even though you would rather sit on the couch, your will drives you to get up and do something. It overrides your powers. That's one level of a tzaddik who can override Hishtalshlus. There's a high level of tzaddik who's able to reach the level of atik, appeal to the level of atik, which is a high level of keser. And on that level, when you are able to reveal that level, so then not only is Hishtalshlus overridden, no, Hishtalshlus actually will agree with what the tzaddik says. Meaning he'll be able to make the system itself rearrange itself to change the decree. Right? So, and that's through appealing to Hashem's pleasure in the world. Meaning that if it was decreed that a person should not be healthy, that was the decree because according to their actions and according to the system, this person deserves to be sick, let's say. So you can appeal then to Hashem, who is beyond what's deserved and not deserved, and make them better. That's what a tzaddik can do, to override it and make them better. They still deserve to be sick, but we're going to not look at what they deserve and what they don't deserve, and make them better. That's path number one. That's a tzaddik. But then there's a yashar who's on a higher level, who appeals to atik. That is Hashem's pleasure in the world. Not just that Hashem should override the decree itself should be undone. That we should say, no, the person deserves to be healthy. Why? Because Hashem has pleasure in the world, and he has pleasure in life and in giving, and so therefore even if technically the person didn't deserve it, but they do deserve it because they're part of this world, they can bring pleasure to Hashem. So a tzaddik who can do that means a tzaddik that makes ishtalshlus agree with that which is higher than ishtalshlus.
That's a yasha.
That's called a yasha.
But people are not called yasha. They usually call them tzaddik. It's the highest level.
Yeah.
They are called chassids.
Huh? Rebbe.
But a chassid is even higher.
Yeah.
Huh?
A chassid is even higher than yasha.
Is it?
Yeah. How can you go higher than yasha? How can there be anything even higher than yasha? So the Rabbi just explained, because even yasha, even that second level, is where hishtalshlus needed convincing. It needed to be changed. The first level was where hishtalshlus didn't change. Hishtalshlus says he doesn't deserve. Just you took something higher than hishtalshlus and forced health, even though hishtalshlus said he shouldn't be healthy. That was the first way. The second way was that you introduced a higher level that convinced hishtalshlus that, even though we thought the person should be sick, but now hishtalshlus is changing and saying he'll be better, he'll be well. But even there, you had to convince hishtalshlus. There's a third level, a higher level, where hishtalshlus itself will come to the conclusion that the person should be better. Not through being convinced or changed, it'll just naturally happen.
Is that yomim or is that below? Is that atik yomim?
It's higher than atik. It's called pnimius atik. So the first level is arich, the second level is atik, the third level is pnimius atik, which is where automatically, naturally, hishtalshlus will change.
It's like the building blocks, like rearrange themselves.
Yeah. They don't need to be overridden. They don't even need to be convinced. It'll just naturally happen. So this is what we're going to examine now, this level. Inyan, the third line at the end. Inyan, the idea is like this. The pnimis atik hu ein sof shebereishut lo yada. In Kabbalistic terms, pnimius atik, the inner level of atik, is called ein sof, the infinite light of Hashem, that is within the head that is not known. This is all Kabbalistic terminology. The Ein Sof, the infinite one himself, that is found in the level called Reisha Delei Sada, the head that is not known. It's a level that cannot be known, there's no consciousness, no awareness there. This is total godliness. So we're not talking about, until now we're talking about Arich, Ratzon, Atik, Tainug. Here we're talking about a level called Pnimis Atik, the inner level of Atik, which is such a level of the personality that it can't even be described with any words. It's the very self of Hashem. That's called Pnimius Atik. And it's called Ein Sof. It's the infinite light of Hashem. It's like Hashem's infiniteness. That's what Atik is. Now the very definition of infinite means it has no limitation. So then, therefore, obviously, if you're talking about Hashem's infiniteness, you cannot possibly say that Hashem's infiniteness is beyond and separate from Ishtalshlus. Because on the level of Ein Sof, you can't even talk about Ishtalshlus as being a separate thing. You can't talk about anything being separate. Did you get that point? That if you're talking about Hashem's infiniteness, what does it mean? What does infinite mean? Infinite means no limitation. So which means that there is nothing that is beyond it, or it is beyond. There's nowhere where it isn't. There's nothing outside of it. So now you can no longer talk about being higher than Ishtalshalos. What do you mean higher? Higher means you're separate. And this is talking about the infinite self of Hashem. It's not separate from anything. So there's no higher than Ishtalshalos anymore. It is Ishtalshalos. Ishtalshalos is it. It's not a separate being. Meaning, until now, what were we talking about? We were talking about Ishtalshalos, meaning the rules of this world, and higher than Ishtalshalos, which is where miracles come from. And how do miracles come into this world? Either by overriding Ishtalshalos or working with Ishtalshalos. But either way, you're talking about two separate things, higher than Ishtalshalos and Ishtalshalos, the light beyond and the light within. There's a third level of miracle where that miracle is drawn down from the Ein Sof, from the infiniteness of Hashem. And on that level, you can't talk about two different lights or two different levels. Hashem's infinity is everywhere. And so therefore, Ishtalshalos is not a separate thing. So it's not overriding Ishtalshalos or convincing Ishtalshalos. It is within Ishtalshalos as well. And on that level, Ishtalshalos does not need to be convinced. It'll just come naturally.
So are you saying there is a certain tzaddik that can tap into that environment?
Yeah. And the technical term for that is a chassid. There's three levels: tzaddik, yasher, and chassid. And the chassid is really a term for a tzaddik who can tap into that level. Let's put it a little bit differently. To understand these three levels, because this is really the crux of this mimer, and it's very abstract at the moment, but to try and bring it down and make it a bit more real. Till now, we're talking about making a miracle happen, bringing down godly light and making a miracle happen, somebody who's unwell to make them better. Let's talk about it in avoda, in our spiritual life. There's also three paths in our spiritual life. What is our spiritual life all about? About bringing the divine light into our personality, into our nefesh bahamis, into our animal soul, into our here and now. So that is the same idea, taking that which is higher than Ishtalshalos and bringing it into Ishtalshalos. Your Ishtalshalos is your personality. And your personality has animalistic drives and physical desires and all types of material distractions. That's who you are. And your avodah is to try and bring the divine light down into that. To make it easier, let's say you're trying to help somebody else. You're trying to bring somebody else into the spiritual path. You could do this to yourself, but it's just easier when we make it into two people. That let's say that there's three types of tzaddikim, of rebbes, who are trying to bring people into avodah, into serving Hashem. There's one rebbe that the way they do it is like this. They are so holy themselves, and they have such divine light about them, that by them displaying their holiness, sharing it with others by teaching and by doing miracles and davening and doing all the things that a rebbe does, by them doing that, so a person is forced to start serving Hashem. If you see such a tzaddik, if you see such intense light, so then how can you not become a better person? They're so inspiring, they're so influential, they've got such an aura about them that just hanging around them, seeing such a person, it forces you to go on the right path. And so whatever animalistic drives you have, you bury them. And whatever other distractions you have, they just become subsumed in the light of this tzaddik. That's one level. Then there's a higher level than that. And that is where a tzaddik doesn't wow you with their holiness, but they teach you. They actually teach you things. In other words, through their teachings, they'll be able to convince you that you should be different. Not by wowing you and overwhelming you, but by actually convincing you, presenting holiness to you in a way that is a compelling argument, and so you will change your mind. That's much deeper than the first one. The first one, you didn't change. By you hanging around holiness and being wowed by it, you're still the same person you were before. Nothing's changed about you. It's just you've been so overwhelmed, that you've buried a part of yourself. You've been overwhelmed by something else. You're still the same person. And if the tzaddik will go away or you go away, so then your old self will come back. Nothing's really changed about you. You've just been wowed by the experience. So when that happens, you didn't really change. Whereas the second way was where you were taught something. You were educated, you were inspired, and your mind developed in a way that you changed your attitude. You've become a new person now. You've broadened yourself. That's a different story. Because if you're able to do that, so then you have changed. So that's a much deeper, much higher level of a tzaddik. That's a much greater influence on a person. To be able to actually change them, educate them to change their ways, that's a much deeper thing. But there's an even higher level than that. And that is a tzaddik who doesn't even need to teach you or convince you. Doesn't need to change your mind. This is a tzaddik that will make you come to the conclusion that you need to change. On your own, you will make it. The tzaddik doesn't need to do anything, doesn't need to say anything, doesn't need to talk to you, doesn't need to convince you or teach you or anything at all. Just being connected to this tzaddik, being around them on any level, will make you want to change. Not that they told you to change, not through their holiness, not through their influence, not because they shone light on you. Just this tzaddik is able to reveal in you your godly nature, your divine soul. So you naturally decide you want to change. The tzaddik didn't make you do it. You did it on your own.
It's similar to number one, You still need close to him.
No, because number one was the tzaddik shone on you, and that forced you to change. But you didn't really change. It was the tzaddik's light on you. This way, it's that you come to the conclusion that you want to change, and you really change. It came from you. The tzaddik is able to ignite in you your divine self. It's not the tzaddik's holiness that makes you change. It's your holiness that makes you change, because you've got a divine soul, and this tzaddik is able to ignite that.
By looking at him, by being in the same room,
Any connection whatsoever.
being in the same country without seeing him.
Oh, you have to see him.
Sometimes,
But
maybe.
that tzaddik may have passed away already.
Yeah, it's not.
I mean, it could be someone who lived 500 years
Yeah,
ago.
yeah. It's any connection. This tzaddik has the ability to make you want to be better. It's different. The first way was the tzaddik forces you not to be you. You get lost in him. The second way is that the tzaddik educates you, teaches you a better way. The third way is that the tzaddik inspires in you a desire to be better.
So could you say in the first one that tzaddik has to be alive, but in the second two they don't necessarily have to be
Even
alive?
The second
even
one,
the
he has
first
to
one,
be alive. He's teaching you.
No, but you can learn.
You can
through
learn
time
that.
as
All
well.
three. It's for a tzaddik, alive or not alive. It's
Okay,
not.
it's not really.
A tzaddik is always alive. A rasha is never alive. I mean, an example of the third way that I can think of is where people went before the Rabbi and for dollars or something like that. They got a blessing, $1, and they went out wanting to keep kosher. Like it often happened. There are a lot of stories like this where people they came to the Rebbe for one thing and they went out. Now the Rebbe did not, first of all, do any miracles. It was just a regular dollars encounter. The Rebbe didn't tell them to start keeping kosher or give them a handbook of kashrus. Reasons why you should keep kosher. That wasn't the discussion. No miracle happened. No, Dala Abracha, and they walked out and they said, I think I should start keeping kosher. So what is that exactly? If somebody had a whole Shabbos with the Rebbe and went to a Farbrengen, and after that whole experience, they came out saying, I've got to change. Okay, you could say that being in that amazing environment, and it has but just walking by the Rebbe for 2 seconds, getting a bracha, nothing dramatic actually happened. Not on a visible level, certainly not. You can't say that like the person couldn't help themselves, after being in the presence of the Rebbe, they've got to keep kosher. Well, what happened? You just walked past a rabbi. But there were people who did this, who after this they said, I've got to stop keeping kosher. What is it? That the Rebbe somehow had this strength of igniting your neshama, that you came to that conclusion. The Rebbe didn't mention that. There was no discussion about it.
Can a Rasha tap into the pnimiut of the ishtal shelu?
Ken, sorry?
A Rasha.
Tap into
the pnimiut of the ishtal shelu.
How would Rasha do that?
I'm asking. Like, for instance, someone like in very high level of, like, Bilam. So he wasn't just normal Rasha.
Right. Okay. He was a sorcerer. And he's, he tapped into the negative side of Ruchnius. That's a different thing. So these three levels, we described about changing a person, the hishtalshlus of a person. In the Maimer, it's talking about changing the hishtalshlus of creation, the nature of creation. You could change human nature or change the nature of the world. It's the same idea. So the first level is where you override creation, you override the world, like you override somebody else's personality by wowing them with holiness. The second way is where you convince hishtalshlus. Hishtalshlus goes along with it. It's like a miracle that happens in a natural way. The laws of nature sort of shift around and make the miracle happen. That's an even higher level. But even higher than that is where there's no intervention. There's no interruption. There's no imposition. It's not that the tzaddik imposes the light on the world. So the world just changes naturally, without any effort. There's no pu'ula, no action done. It happened in an automatic way. It came from within creation. That's the biggest miracle. And that comes from the highest tzaddik. Let's just skip out the square brackets. We're 8 lines down after the square brackets. Umezeh muven. The bitul hagzera shemitzad hishtalshlus aydem shachas hagilui. The pnimis atik, that when you nullify a decree that hishtalshlus has made through drawing down pnimius atik, this third highest level, it's not that the revelation of pnimius atik created a nullification of the decree. It's rather that when pnimius atik is revealed, when the infinite light of Hashem is revealed, so then the decree cannot exist in the first place.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah.
There's no room.
This third level is not like the first two. The first two was there was a decree, you nullified it, either by overriding the decree or by re-inspiring hishtalshlus itself to change. But either way, there was a decree and you've nullified it. The third level is that when pnimius atik, when this level is revealed, the decree could not have been there in the first place. It's like it was never there. Because the other two levels are talking about, there's two opposing forces. There's hishtalshlus and higher than hishtalshlus. So hishtalshlus is one thing, higher than hishtalshlus comes and overrides it, or rearranges it, inspires it. But either way, there's two things. This third level is, we're talking about the infinite light of Hashem is revealed. The infinite light of Hashem is not, there's not two things, there's not something outside of it that it is changing. It is the inner reality of everything that's being revealed. The Ein Sof is, there's no opposition that it's overcoming. So when you reveal this level, what you're revealing is there was never a decree in the first place. That was just an illusion. It just looked like there was. It wasn't really.
So it's not that there's, how we often say, there's no difference between good and bad there. There is no bad there. There's no distinction to be made.
Yeah. On that level, that's what's being revealed on that level. Just like with those three tzaddikim that we just spoke about. The first level was that there's the tzaddik and he's overcoming you. The second level is that there's a tzaddik who's inspiring you. The third level is, who's the tzaddik? In the third level.
Yourself.
It's all a lakus, we're all one. Everyone's got a godly soul. There's not two forces fighting each other. The tzaddik reveals that you're also a tzaddik. In other words, when the godly light, when the real divine self is revealed, there's no opposition in the first place. There's no two sides. Now, this fits in beautifully with the Gemara that is relevant to this. We quoted it earlier. The Inyan Chasidecha Yivarchucha Hu Kedei Yerushalmi. We quoted the Rebbe Rashab's Maimer. And this Maimer of the Rebbe has been based a lot on this Rebbe Rashab's Maimer, on the verse that says Chasidecha Yivarchucha. Right in Ashrei, remember that? It says Yoducha Hashem Kol Masecha v'Chasidecha Yivarchucha, which means that all of your creations will acknowledge you, Hashem, and your Hasidim will bless you. How do we explain that? All of your creations will acknowledge you. Acknowledging Hashem means there's a level of Hashem we can't understand, we can just acknowledge. We can't relate to, we can just acknowledge that it exists. That is the level of Hashem that's higher than Ishtalshalos. All of your creation acknowledge that there is a level higher than Ishtalshalos. But Chasidecha, but a Chasid, Yivarchucha, can bless, meaning can draw down that level, can draw down the level that's higher than Ishtalshalos. What everyone else can only acknowledge, a Chassid is able to draw down that level. Yeah? So the Rebbe Rashab, in saying that, quoted the Yerushalmi, the Talmud Yerushalmi, Afilu hu HaKadosh Baruch Hu Omer Hachin, V'atu Omer Hachin. The Yerushalmi says that even if Hashem says this, and you say that, Didoch Kaima Didila Kaima. What you say lasts, and what I say doesn't last. Again, the Gemara Yerushalmi says about a tzaddik, or here really a chassid, that Hashem says about such a person, even if I say one thing and you say something else, meaning I say things should be this way, and you say no, things should be that way. So what I say doesn't last, what you say lasts. What I say doesn't happen, what you say happens. Now the wording of this is a bit different. This is not like a tzaddik nullifies what Hashem says. Listen carefully. The pirush didilo kaimahu, when it says that what I say doesn't last, doesn't happen, what Hashem says doesn't happen, it means not that when the tzaddik says something else, it nullifies what Hashem said. Rather, when you reveal pnimius atik, the level of Ein Sof, through saying something different to what Hashem said, the initial decree is like it never happened. It doesn't exist. Again, we've now seen 3 different sayings from the Gemara that talk about a tzaddik nullifying Hashem's decrees. One of them says that Hashem makes a decree and a tzaddik nullifies the decree. That was number 1. The second one says that when Hashem makes a decree, He will nullify the decree for the tzaddik. And the third one says, I say one thing, you say another thing. What you say happens, and what I say doesn't happen.
Because there is no decree.
So the first one is that Hashem has a decree, the tzaddik nullifies it. Hashem here is not talking about Hashem's essence, it's talking about Hashem as he is within Ishtalshalos. So let's use the word Ishtalshalos. Ishtalshalos says there's a decree. The Beis Din Shel Maila, the heavenly court, says there's a decree. The tzaddik nullifies the decree. That's the first level. Nullifying the decree. Who nullifies? The tzaddik. The Beis Din Shel Maila, Ishtalshalos, says there should be a decree. The tzaddik nullifies it. That's level number one. Higher than that is where Ishtalshalos makes a decree. The tzaddik doesn't agree, so Ishtalshalos nullifies the decree for the tzaddik. That's the second level where the tzaddik is able not to nullify and override Ishtalshalos, but convince Ishtalshalos, change around Ishtalshalos.
Because he's got big marriage.
Yes, because that's the second level. The third level is this Gemara Yerushalmi that says that I say this, you say that, and what you say lasts, what I say doesn't last. Meaning it was never there. The decree was never there. What you say is reality, what I say is not reality, because you revealed a level that's so deep that there cannot be any opposition in the first place.
So why do you have this dialogue, I say, you said? It's never said anyway.
Well, it was said, but it doesn't exist. It's reversing Ishtalshalos still. Something has happened here, but it hasn't happened in a way where it had to be nullified. It's like it was never there. It's like it never existed in the first place.
Because when it comes down, it's something happens.
Yeah.
But the source of it
is revealed, and then everything changes.
So is normal davening like what? Like where's the inbox there for that? Like what are we trying to level?
This is not talking about davening. This is talking about a tzaddik changing the world.
Right. Okay.
In avodah, you can talk about it in avodah, like which level of avodah we're doing, even though we're not tzaddikim. But there are still these three levels of avodah. There's a level where you're struggling. Your animal soul has a very strong opinion one way, and you have to be the tzaddik that nullifies that. And say, no, you want that? No, that's not going to happen. Then there's a level where you actually work with the Nefesh Bahamis to try and turn that around and convince it that it shouldn't want that. You can actually make your Nefesh Bahamis agree to do the right thing. There is such an avodah. And then there's a deeper level where the Nefesh Bahamis itself comes to the conclusion, the right conclusion. There's a deeper avodah, which we'll see. It's possible, but it's not.
You got to connect to a tzaddik is
Yeah.
the way to go.
Yeah, that's right. So the paragraph concludes. So that's what the pasuk that we started off with at the beginning of the Maimer, where it says that all of your creation will acknowledge you, but your chassid will draw you down, meaning the level that can only be acknowledged, which is beyond understanding. The chassid is able to draw down that level. What does that mean? That to draw down from the level that can only be acknowledged in a way of bracha, only a chassid can do that. Do you remember what we said about a bracha? The difference between a bracha and davening is that davening is I want to change reality. I'm asking a request that something should happen. A bracha is that it should happen automatically. That the bracha means that it's there. It just has to be brought down. Right? In davening, we're saying Yehi Ratzon. Hashem, please. I know you didn't want this, but I'm asking you to want this. A bracha is that Hashem does want it. It should just happen.
At tzaddik's bracha, at tzaddik's davening, you learn like creates a new reality.
Yeah, but to create a new reality means you have to change things. A bracha is not changing anything. Is that it's there already. It just needs to be brought down. Who can just bring down, without having to change reality, who can just bring down this bracha? A chassid. Only a person on that level of a chassid can bring down the level that is yoducha, that can only be acknowledged, can bring it down in a way that it should just automatically happen, without effort, without a impact, without a tension. It should happen automatically. Because a chassid is able to draw down pnimius atik, which is that level of Ein Sof where everything is one. And so when you draw down that level, there doesn't need to be an action, a change, an effort, rearrangement. Automatically, once that level is revealed, there's no opposition in the first place.
Very good.
So are these the hidden tzaddikim? These are the 36s?
It's enough. You know, they say some tzaddikim, some of the hidden tzaddikim are the tzaddikim that we know. Because what you think about them that they're a tzaddik, you don't have any idea. They're really hidden tzaddikim. Sometimes the best place a tzaddik can hide is by being a tzaddik. Because you think you've grasped what a tzaddik this person is. No, they're way beyond what you've grasped. So it's one thing for a hidden tzaddik to be, a shoemaker or some ruffian somewhere and hiding as a tzaddik. But then there are tzaddikim that are tzaddikim and are hiding because we don't really know what they're about.
So do you know of a chassid nowadays?
No.